If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. On today's show, Donald Trump remains in damage control mode. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris dazzles in D.C. We'll break it all down, but first, a look at the headlines. Vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance will sit down for an interview with podcast host Joe Rogan today. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump participated in a 3-hour interview with Rogan just last week. The podcaster is hoping an interview with Vice President Kamala Harris happens before Election Day, November 5th. Around 250,000 people canceled their subscriptions to the Washington Post after the newspaper refuses to endorse a presidential candidate. The outlet's billionaire owner Jeff Bezos reportedly blocked a draft endorsement for Vice President Kamala Harris last week. North Korea's foreign minister is in Moscow to hold strategic talks with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. The meeting comes as the Pentagon confirms around 10,000 North Korean troops are currently in Russia and could be deployed to Ukraine. China lodges a complaint with the World Trade Organization after the European Union decides to impose extra tariffs on Chinese-made electric cars. The additional taxes faces opposition from Germany and Hungary amid fears of a trade war. And flash floods kill at least 51 in Valencia in eastern Spain. The Spanish government deploys its military to carry out emergency evacuations from the devastated areas. We begin with the race for the White House, which is now in the home stretch. Vice President Kamala Harris gave her final campaign speech in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday night. At least 75,000 people attended the event and cheered on the vice president as she delivered some of her sharpest criticisms of Donald Trump. Now, the speech took place on the Ellipse, also referred to as the President's South Park on the National Mall. And the venue choice was no accident. In fact, it was the exact same place where Donald Trump held his rally on January 6, 2021, inciting thousands of his MAGA supporters to storm the Capitol to disrupt the certification of President Joe Biden's presidential victory.
Look, we know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election. An election that he knew he lost. Americans died as a result of that attack. 140 law enforcement officers were injured because of that attack. And while Donald Trump sat in the White House watching as the violence unfolded on television, he was told by his staff that the mob wanted to kill his own vice president. And Donald Trump responded with 2 words: so what? America, that's who Donald Trump is. And that's who is asking you to give him another 4 years in the Oval Office.
Harris warned of an unstable, unhinged, and power-hungry Donald Trump who would be ready with a revenge list if voted to the White House. The Democrat offered Americans the option to vote for change, reminding them of what a Trump presidency looked like after 2016.
America, we know what Donald Trump has in mind. More chaos, more division, and policies that help those at the very top and hurt everyone else. I offer a different path, and I ask for your vote. And here is my pledge to you. I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your life better. I am not looking to score political points. I will strengthen, not surrender, America's global leadership. And I will stand with our friends because I know that our alliances keep American people safe and make America stronger and more secure.
Harris's speech touched on several core issues, including the economy, health care, reproductive rights, and the importance of democracy. Addressing women and young voters, Kamala Harris urged them to reject Donald Trump's hate-filled rhetoric and turn the page for a new generation of leadership in America.
America, for too long, we have been consumed with too much division, chaos, and mutual distrust. And it can be easy then to forget a simple truth. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. It is time to stop pointing fingers. We have to stop pointing fingers and start locking arms. It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and division. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next President of the United States of America.
The speech was part of the Democrats' closing arguments a week from Election Day, and Harris will now visit swing states in an effort to convince voters to show up in large numbers and reject divisive and hate-filled politics. The enthusiasm for Kamala Harris was clearly visible in the nation's capital last night, with thousands pouring in from neighboring Maryland and Virginia, two states where the Democrat enjoys wide support. Some 51 million Americans have already voted this election in a battle that will decide who runs the world's most powerful and influential country for the next 4 years. And staying with the race for the White House, former President Donald Trump appeared to be in damage control mode on Tuesday as he praised Puerto Ricans and Latinos days after his controversial rally in New York. Donald Trump claimed no other American president has done more for Puerto Rico, even though he blocked crucial hurricane aid to the island and considered selling it during his first term.
And I'm so proud that we're getting support from Latinos like never before. We're setting every record. Hispanics, Latinos. Nobody loves our Latino community and our Puerto Rican community more than I do. Nobody. You know, it's interesting because I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president by far, nobody close. I've provided historic funding and the hospital ship when they were hit with a couple of really bad ones right in the road. We got the ship over there with thousands of rooms, actually. It was amazing. A floating hospital, the biggest in the world. I will deliver the best future for Puerto Ricans and for Hispanic Americans.
The ex-president's clarification comes after his allies made racist remarks against Puerto Ricans and Latinos at Madison Square Garden on Sunday. During the rally, Trump supporter and comedian Tony Hinchcliffe joked that Puerto Rico was a floating island of garbage and Latinos love making babies. The comedian's crass language has hurt the sentiments of these communities, which criticized Donald Trump's silent approval of the contentious remarks while demanding an apology.
Well, I think his opinion, his expressions are very bad. I mean, we're talking about a guy who said it with Donald Trump's approval. All these kinds of messages have to go through a filter before they are said. So I think they're pretty bad.
Trump looks at immigrants like a bug that needs to be eradicated, but he forgets that 90% of the jobs that U.S. citizens won't do, it is the Latinos who do it, the immigrants who do those jobs. I would like to see what would happen in the United States without immigrants.
However, some Puerto Ricans who still support the former president thinks he's the best choice for their community.
Donald Trump is that leader. Donald Trump is not only the right choice for the Puerto Rican people, he's the right choice for all of America. We're here today because we're tired of the empty promises. We're tired of being told how to think, who to vote for, and watch as we have this broken border, a broken economy under weak leaders like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Now, a small group of protesters also arrived outside the arena where the rally was being held Tuesday night. They carried Puerto Rican flags and chanted slogans like, "Immigrants make America great." Meanwhile, an edited clip of President Joe Biden went viral on social media in which he apparently referred to Trump supporters as garbage. Republicans were quick to pick up the news, roping the president into the controversy.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I have breaking news for you, Mr. President. You may not have heard this. Just moments ago, Joe Biden stated that our supporters are garbage. Are garbage. He's talking about the Border Patrol. He's talking about nurses. He's talking about teachers. He's talking about everyday Americans who love their country and want to dream big again and support you, Mr. President.
However, the commander-in-chief later clarified in a social media post that he was referring to comedian Hinchcliffe in his remarks rather than supporters of Donald Trump. Notably, Republicans are the second largest population of Hispanic origin in the United States after Mexicans. All 7 battleground states, including Pennsylvania, have a large presence of Puerto Ricans as well as Latinos who could make or break Trump's chances of returning to power. And staying with Donald Trump, the former president has doubts about the integrity of voting in the biggest prize next Tuesday, the battleground state of Pennsylvania. In a social media post, Donald Trump said the counties of Lancaster and York in Pennsylvania experienced voter fraud with thousands of potentially fraudulent ballots. He also repeated the same claim while addressing a rally on Tuesday night.
We've set an all-time record in the early voting, by the way, so if you have a mail-in ballot, get that damn ballot in, please, immediately, because they've already started cheating in Lancaster. They've cheated. We caught them with 2,600 votes. No, we caught them cold. 2,600 votes. Think of this. Think of this.
Now, last week, officials from the 2 Pennsylvania counties announced they'd found suspicious voter registration forms in large numbers. The first report of potential fraud came from Lancaster when election authorities found inaccuracies in roughly 2,500 registration forms delivered by a third-party group. And in neighboring York County, another third-party group delivered a batch of election materials that contained a few mail-in ballots, but mostly registration forms. Officials from both counties maintain that while some documents seem to be fraudulent, there is no evidence of any of them being actual votes. Now, investigations are currently underway in the suspected voter applications, and it is too soon to draw any conclusions. Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro says that Donald Trump is trying to create chaos and stoke division and fear about the election process right before polling day. Meanwhile, voters across Pennsylvania appeared frustrated on Tuesday as they stood in long lines to cast mail-in ballots.
I got here right at opening time. It was already around the block. And there was a lot of confusion. I think people assumed this was like early voting, we're starting to get used to the concept of that. But this is on-demand mail voting, so the infrastructure isn't as robust, I think.
Unlike other states, Pennsylvania doesn't allow people to vote early at polling centers. Instead, they need to mail their ballot or visit a dedicated drop-off location. Early vote totals clearly indicate Democrats are outpacing Republicans, even though Republicans have increased their early vote numbers by nearly 30% from 4 years ago. In 2020, President Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in Pennsylvania by less than 1%. Will the pendulum swing this time is anyone's guess. With Election Day just around the corner, more than 50 million Americans have already cast their ballots. And this time, a large number of Republicans are embracing early voting. Meanwhile, Democrats are pushing to maintain their early voting lead, but turnout is lower in some historically mail-in states. In our next report, we dive deeper into how early voting trends could impact Election Day.
In the final stretch before Election Day, over 44 million Americans have already cast their ballots. This surge confirms how early voting has become a mainstay in American elections. However, this high turnout comes with some unexpected patterns. In states with long histories of mail-in voting, like Washington, Oregon, and Colorado, early voting has slowed. One reason for this shift could be less anxiety over mail delays.
This cycle, it's been pretty steady the entire time. To the extent that you see behind me, that usually happens about when we get to about a week out. Obviously, it's a week till Election Day. It's on the people's top of mind, and that's when we're the busiest.
In battleground states, early voting shows a complex mix. Republicans who trailed Democrats significantly in early mail-in voting in 2020 have narrowed that gap. In Pennsylvania, Democrats still lead in mail-in ballots, but Republicans have made impressive gains compared to the 2020 cycle.
I think the biggest reason for me being here early was that the Republican Party came out and said to do it, that it was help. I think 2020 and even 16, they showed the ability the Democrats had so many ballots done before Election Day.
Numbers suggest Republicans are narrowing the margin, with over 191,000 early GOP voters this year, who typically voted on Election Day in 2020. And in comparison, Democrats have about half that number, which is just over 104,000.
I know he's a little arrogant, but I feel like from what he did for over 4 years ago, the economy was better. We just feel like that hopefully he's going to put us back on some kind of track.
He fight for this country. That's how I like. He put his heart into it. He fight for the country. He fight for the people in the United States.
In states like North Carolina and Arizona, Republicans are also seeing stronger early voting performance compared to 2020. Some of these gains are due to newly registered Republicans outpacing new Democrats in early voting turnout.
Yeah, I'm here with my older brother, and we were really determined to get in and vote as soon as we can. This is a monumental election. For the first time in my life, democracy itself is at stake. I really believe that. And that's why I think it's so important for everyone to be out and voting.
Democrats, however, have made last-minute gains in North Carolina. Initially behind their 2020 levels, Democratic turnout there has increased in recent days, indicating that an early lead can shift quickly as more votes come in.
Having voted a lot at my age, I think it's important for a woman. Yes, I definitely think that's important. And I think the right woman is Kamala.
Again, I expect it's going to be close, and I expect a lot of women are going to come out to vote. Me personally, I'm voting because I have 2 daughters, and they're going to vote, and I'm voting on their behalf for their future.
With just a week to go, both parties are pushing hard for every single vote. Democrats are making a strong final push with high-profile rallies featuring Vice President Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, and even pop icons Beyoncé.
Now, you've heard this already, but it's worth repeating. If you plan to vote early in person, tomorrow is your last chance. Do it tomorrow. Do not dilly or dally. Get out there. Vote.
Republicans and Democrats both see these numbers as either a consolidation of votes or a shift in voter behavior. But one thing is clear, the dynamics of American voting have changed, and predicting the final outcome this year is tougher than ever. Early voting and mail-in votes continue to rise, and as more ballots are cast, the numbers will reveal who has the edge in this highly charged election.
The glittering lights of Diwali in New York set the perfect stage for more than just a festival this October. Hundreds of Indian Americans, including tech giants and Bollywood icons, gathered to celebrate their heritage and discuss their newfound political power in the United States. Vice President Kamala Harris, a candidate of Indian descent, is running for the highest office, and the community is now more energized than ever. Both Democrats and Republicans are pulling out all the stops to win the Indian American vote in key states. Will this powerful group swing the balance of power? Here's our final report with more.
On a glamorous October night in Washington, D.C., the White House was lit up for Diwali. President Joe Biden, who's nearing the end of his 50-year-long political career, declared Diwali is proudly celebrated in the White House. After lighting a diya lamp in the Blue Room, he delivered remarks before a gathering of Indian Americans invited for the reception.
Now, as president, I've been honored to host the biggest Diwali receptions ever at the White House. Together, we may show the power in the gathering of light, the light of knowledge, the light of unity and truth, the light of freedom for democracy, for America, America we share and cherish. Only in America is everything possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Welcome to your home. Happy Diwali, America. God bless.
Knowing that this is his last Diwali reception, President Joe Biden did not leave any opportunity to speak in favor of Kamala Harris.
You know, I selected Kamala to be my running mate for many reasons. She's smart, she's tough, but most importantly, and I mean it sincerely from the bottom of my heart, she has character.
With several Indian Americans in the audience, the US president even applauded South Asians for their story as immigrants and their contributions to American life.
The South Asian American community enriched every part of American life, and that's the truth. And that is among the fastest growing, most engaged community in the country you are.
The US president was right. This wasn't just a Diwali bash, it was a moment of pride, potential and political power. Indian Americans, who are now the second largest immigrant group in the United States, are a critical force in this year's election.
We have a community that is growing very rapidly, that has grown by more than 50% between 2010 and 2020. In some ways, this is a very new community, right? 70% of people of Indian origin either arrived in the United States or were born after the year 2000, right? So we sometimes think of the Indian American community as quite old in the United States, but in fact, the bulk of that population is quite new.
Both Democrats and Republicans are wooing the Indian American community. But clearly, the community's choice is Kamala Harris, with at least 61% of Indian Americans favoring Harris against 31% who support Donald Trump. During a Diwali bash at the Pierre Hotel, Jessel Tank, the first Indian cast member on The Real Housewives of New York City, echoed this sentiment, saying, "This time we have someone relatable who truly understands us." But Vice President Kamala Harris is not the only South Asian face making waves. Prominent Republicans Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy and Trump's running mate's wife, Usha Vance, are also very much in the spotlight. According to a survey, the Democratic Party has seen a 9% decline in support among respondents, from 56% in 2020 to 47% currently. With 6 days until the final day, both Harris and her Republican counterpart, Donald Trump, are doubling down on reaching this influential group. Harris has hosted cultural events, even opened her official residence for Diwali gatherings. Republicans, however, are also taking it seriously. Hindu Coalition is spearheading outreach, emphasizing that Trump has made strides in strengthening US-India ties. The stakes are high, the issues are complex, and for Indian Americans, this election is personal. Both parties know it, and the candidates are watching closely. As the final ballots are cast, one question remains. Which way will this powerful community swing, and could they be the deciding factor in this historic race?
That's our show for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great night, everyone. And again, thanks for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired. I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you